This episode of Super Pulp Science is brought to you by Canada's History Society, publisher of Canada's History Magazine, and Kayak, Canada's History Magazine for Kids. Go to canadashistory.ca.
Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
Welcome back to Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. Today, my long-suffering co-host Justin Curry and I have brought a very special guest to you from the woolly worlds of freelance lifestyles. You may, if you want to work in art as a job, as a freelancer, need to work with a person like James Gillespie. He is the art director. Hello, James.
Greetings, gentlemen.
Why don't you tell us a little bit what an art director does, James, and why we have to always play nice with you?
Well, my job is essentially, I'll give you the rundown. I am the art director for Canada's History Society. I work on two different publications. I work for Canada's History Magazine and Kayak, Canada's History Magazine for Kids. As art director, designer, production designer, and a variety of other hats that I wear there, my job is to hire the artists to do the kind of work that is required for our magazine when we are unable to find historic art or historic photography to reinforce particular stories.
You are the gatekeeper.
I am. I am the gatekeeper.
I see what you're saying here.
And the artists have the key.
How many artists do you have to work with on a daily basis?
On a daily basis right now, I'm only working with one at the moment, but that's because we just hit production deadline. Prior to that, we were working with maybe another 3 artists for Kayak, which just went to press.
So every day?
Almost every day, yeah.
Every day.
It all depends. I mean, obviously we try to stagger the deadlines because if you're working with 3 artists, specifically on Kayak, which is a little bit more intensive for the amount of artwork that we're looking to produce, we probably pay a little bit more for Canada's History Magazine because it's a higher print run, it's a larger format magazine, and when we're looking to do that art, that has to appeal to a much broader demographic and an older demographic, whereas Kayak is going to be it will be cartoon based, and in that capacity, when we're working with those 3 people, you don't want all your art to come in on the same day. I don't give my artists the same deadline because I want to be able to look at the art, assess it, and give proper feedback. And it's really hard when you have 3 pieces of art that have to do with 3 different historic eras or stories, and to try and give them the kind of attention that they require.
So how many years have you worked at the magazine?
It'll be 8 years this May.
8 years.
Maybe 9.
Can you hazard a guess at the number of different artists you would have given creative direction to in that time?
Probably 20 to 30. 20 to 30.
20 to 30, regular?
Yeah, the thing is that I don't cycle through them. You try to find people, and I have a very good
track. Okay, so I'm sensing something here. Aren't you seeing a pattern here that if you please the art director,
they keep you around?
They keep you around.
100%. Well, exactly.
Yeah. So how do we please you, James, and others like you?
Well, we've talked about this. I'd like to state that, Greg and Justin and I, we've known each other for a number of years, and we've had conversations similar to this, and you answer the question more often than anything in a quote that you say from I believe it's Neil Gaiman, which is "be a pleasure to work with."
Oh yeah, I steal from him all the time.
Yeah, and hit your deadline. Those two.
There's 3 points, and you can only hit 2 of them. It's be really good, be on time, or be a pleasure to talk to, and you can only have 2 of those. So you can be an asshole as long as you're on time.
Yeah, and better than everyone.
You can miss deadlines, but if you're a pleasure to talk to.
Yeah.
I half agree with that.
Yeah.
So hold on. I thought the number was going to be much higher.
Yeah.
The number of rotating artists that you work with. So I'm a little bit shocked by that. So 20 or 30 artists fill out the bulk of those 2 publications, and that's amazing to me. What do you have to do to get in the door? How many do you review? Maybe this is a better question. How many artists have you reviewed and turned down
and
in those.
And where are the artists coming from? Are they coming to you, or are you seeking them out?
It's a combination of both, as a matter of fact. I get emails. That's dropped off substantially since there's been more of the privacy laws that restrict people from sending you unsolicited emails.
Right.
But prior to that, I would get a lot of emails. I still get stuff from representatives, so agents or agencies that house a number of designers. I will get updates from them about artists that are coming in. I will have artists who send me postcards often, little postcard samples of their work, and I'm on mailing lists, so if they update their work, I'll get a new postcard, and if I like what I see, I have a folder at work and I slide it in to be reviewed at a later date, because most of the time I have my more consistent levels. I also, on the occasion, get a few cold calls. That happens very rarely. I'm not against having it happen, but I have had people who try to keep me on the phone for like 40 minutes, and it becomes more of a friendly conversation, at which point I'm actually less likely to hire them for taking up so much of my time, because I'm actually working when people call me up. I do have one more thing for statement, is that I also find artists every now and then at Comic-Cons.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, we often say nice things about Comic-Cons on this show, occasionally. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that, Justin?
Well, we spend a lot of time there, so if we didn't like it, that would suck.
That would suck.
Yeah. One of the artists specifically who I've worked with through that is Ryan Harvey from Honeydale.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, his work's awesome.
He did a stint for 1 year as the intro artist for Kayak. So we often have a number of information-based nuggets of information that get represented in the first, page 4 and 5 of the magazine, that will talk specifically about a broader aspect of whatever theme we're dealing with, and so we hired him to do that.
And you met him at Comic-Con specifically?
I believe, yes. Actually, I was right beside him when I was working a table for you two. Actually,
awesome.
I think
we need to have the Honeydale guys.
Yeah, we have to have them on.
He's very talented.
Yeah, I know, and super funny. Drama is easy, but comedy is hard. And every time I laugh at a single panel illustration that somebody's done.
Well, you posted one of his works the other day.
So
the one of, what was it? It was all the wrestlers as various aspects of like the human condition.
Stress. And
it was like these heroes that fight against mental illness. It was all of these like giant wrestling-looking figures with their wonderful physiques, but they had cute little shirts on that said things like exercise and love and talking to your family and things like that.
Yeah, so that's just that's a smattering of how to get in, but generally that's what I would say is if I had any advice to people as to how to contact or who to contact as an art director, I mean, my contact is on the Canada's History website. It is in the magazine.
Okay, but there's two things there. You said that we're not supposed to send unsolicited emails anymore, but your contact is open on the site. So is this true of most magazines, that there's contact person?
Yeah. The thing to remember is that you can contact the society. I do get mail sent to me, James Gillespie at the society, like so they'll often send postcards, and that stuff comes through. And I always tell people, go and find a magazine, go to a website, go and just watch the credits of a movie or a TV show, because it tells you who the art director is.
Right.
You know?
So if I'm not in any magazines right now, and I want to start doing some more editorial illustration for magazines, should I just kind of go to McNally or Chapters, go to the magazine section, find all the magazines that speak to me artwork wise, go to that credits page, find all those art directors and collect those contacts and send them portfolio?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For the night is dark and full of terrors.
For the people who have never done it before, the night is long and full of terrors. What is that portfolio? What should it look like? Short or long?
I'd say 10 to 12 pieces.
10 to 12 pieces.
Yeah.
10 to 12 pieces.
You don't want to see 20 to 30 pieces. It's too much. It's overload. And really, outside of that, you're probably going to if you have that many pieces, you've probably built yourself some kind of web-based page, be it Squarespace or whatever. Right. And you will provide your email link and I can go to your website and view
anyway.
The full gamut of your work. You just have to supply your best stuff, and it has to be geared towards
sci-fi, cyberpunk probably doesn't have much to do with Canada's History magazine.
No, but I always say my superpower, why I ended up as an art director, is because I have a great eye for talent, which is why probably the number of artists that I work with is smaller. I've had a good run of looking at someone's art and saying, I think that's the perfect style for this.
Right.
And
matching flavors.
And just being lucky to a certain degree that the person's really good to work with. They hit deadlines and everything like that. And if it works, I keep them.
Right.
And I try to cycle them through. You don't want the art to get too stagnant unless it's very specific that you want that. For instance, like the Honeydill, that I wanted that look every single time. For a cover, I generally will stagger the artists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I guess that speaks to my sort of flawed perception of you having this huge, I thought you had hundreds of artists that you work with, because the magazine seems very many and varied with lots of different.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of professional cowardice in there that, sometimes you are, when you've got something consistent and you have a good style, and you might see another style, but there's the worry, right? You don't know that person.
Right.
And sometimes it's not to say, like in that 10-year span, I have hired other artists and not had great experiences.
Right.
And that
Can you tell us about some of those experiences?
Certainly.
Do you have a favorite?
Yes. It was a cover that we did for Canada's History probably around 2015.
We'll leave the names out to protect the innocent.
Yes, absolutely. Omission of names. But this was a point of, and it's not fully the artist's fault. It's also a little bit my fault.
Ooh.
You got to take
Full
responsibility for your
here.
actions in some of these cases. And we did an article on Vikings. It was actually on Norse traders, but in order to sell the magazine, we used the word Vikings.
Good buzzword.
Absolutely. And so it was about the wool industry falling out on the Norse people because of Britain. And, this is way back in the day, right? And so the traders actually made it over to, they've found evidence that Norse people had traveled over into the Arctic of Canada and were like harvesting walrus tusks and stuff like that, and bolstering their economy through like ivory trade, essentially. But in order to do that, we called it Northern Vikings, or Arctic Vikings is what it was called. And so I was tasked with the challenge of finding that perfect cover. And I very fortunately have an editor who is a metalhead. And you'd never think that the editor of a national history magazine would be involved in heavy metal and intense music like that, but he was, and he kind of wanted that he wanted to have that almost.
People are many and varied, James. We
absolutely.
Here on Super Pulp Science.
He wanted to have that sort of metal album style. So I went out, I found a guy on Behance and hired him. Said, hey, can you do this? He said, yeah, I want to work with you. So we go to town. And I send him a creative brief, which for those of you who don't know is I basically will give you dimensions, colors, I will give reference, and I will explain the concept to an artist. And that's the starting point for the artist. I send all of this stuff, which is basically we want a Viking. It's got to look kind of like Rollo from Vikings, big black beard and furs and a giant axe, and he's standing in the winter scene, and he's aggressively just standing there intense. And we send it off to the guy, and he then writes back to me and says, hey, the folder that you sent to me that's a zip file of everything, I can't open your reference. And so what do we do? And I said, well, you just hold off for the weekend, and I will sort this out. I'll send you another link on Monday, and you can then open that, use your reference, and get going. So I show up to work after the weekend on the Monday, and he is artwork ready for me.
Whoa. You told him, okay, just wait, and instead he just worked without reference instead?
Yes. And so instead of having the Rollo character, it's these two Vikings in sort of a spring scene with a ship behind them that is not referenced as a Viking ship. It's almost like a fantasy ship, and there's these giant cliffs in the background. It's actually quite beautifully rendered. Completely wrong, though.
Right.
Historically inaccurate.
Yeah, like a great fantasy Viking, but not good for Canada's History magazine.
Not for the concept that we were pushing. And so at that point, it's also fully colored and fully rendered. Right? So this isn't a rough sketch. This isn't anything. Right. So I assume, hey, this is how this guy works. He obviously is so fast that he can paint this stuff in color. What a bonus that is, because now we have the colors, but it's wrong, so I'll just write him back and say, hey, wasn't right, let's do this. Write back, say, that's not what we were looking for. Here's what it is. Here's the reference. Please have a look and respond with something appropriate. It comes back this time, but this time it looks like something out of Game of Thrones. Like, it's not a Viking. The guy's got like this weird medieval helmet. He's got this axe over his shoulder, which is fine because it's supposed to be a Viking axe, but it's not a Viking axe. It's like some kind of like weird fantasy axe. And he's holding this sword in his hand pointed down. So he's holding the axe over the shoulder. In the other hand, he's got this sword that's coming down, but it's not a Viking sword. It's some other European
dear
sword.
listeners, one thing you can learn from this is that if you've been sent reference, you should follow that reference.
100%.
Particularly if the art director themselves has sent you that reference. Yeah. Don't deign to believe that you know better. Yeah. Have you ever done? You've worked with art directors plenty of times.
This is reminding me of like a lot of times when I'm doing freelance for not magazines, but for like just one person who's commissioning me. My go-to is usually to not let them art direct me too much and go ahead, like, just basically like pretty much finish it, because what I have envisioned in my head is usually better than what they can try to get out of me.
Right. So you think you know better?
Well, but I think this is a very different situation.
Well, it's different in the scope, right?
Yes.
If a single client is saying, I have a concept for a commission, and you do a little bit of extra work, that's on you.
But I'm wondering if this guy came from that same place where he's just learned to, when he gets commissioned, he trusts himself and trusts his own vision, and he knows better, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish it. But when it comes to like a history magazine where things like historical accuracy are so important, I think you need to pump the brakes a little bit and make sure.
Well, especially when the art director has done the time to provide you with the research.
Yeah.
To say, this is the right look and feel. This is the era. Here are the weapons. He was sent what Viking axe looked like, what a Viking helmet is look like. Specific instructions. Please don't put, which he didn't, don't put horns on the helmet, because Viking helmets didn't have horns.
You can't walk around with horns on your helmet. It looks ridiculous.
I think most people, if they're in this position to make art, I think are wise enough to know that if you've been sent instructions, you should follow them. Mm-hmm. But what's a misstep that's more common that you see that we could help some listener now
I
avoid?
Think that one of the main points is to be communicative. I find that sometimes artists, they might wait a little late, or they will just send something back, and it's about that idea of allowing the process to being receptive to criticism at an earlier stage in the process. So during the rough stage and whatnot. Don't get too married to what you're doing, especially, again, when you're working with something as specific as history. It's not the same world as something that's conceptual with sci-fi, where there is a little bit more flexibility,
So what's your rough stages look like? You basically don't really have roughs to speak of. You have like a little scribble as a thumbnail. It's
been a while since I've had to show my rough work, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, it's more or less like a thumbnail. It's a very rough sketch. But I also was used to working with clients who didn't understand that part of the process. Like, they didn't understand that a rough was a rough. They're like, okay, well, this is a scribble. We need this is so far away from what we want to get out of you. Like, what is this?
Now, didn't you do an illustration for, I want to say, like Popular Mechanics or something? You did?
Yes. Was it? Yeah, it was Popular. No. Yeah, Popular Mechanics? I can't remember.
We have it in your trophy
in my trophy case.
But
they hired me based primarily on my style. He found me at a Comic-Con. He liked the shattered style. He's like, I have these pieces of tech. I want you to shatter those. And then they formed together to make this. He knew exactly what he wanted to get out of me. So there was no like questioning what I was going to do. He saw exactly what I could do. And we talked about this yesterday. Greg and I did a chat at the college. It was the point in my freelance career where people stopped hiring me as just a artist to do a thing. They were hiring me for my style. You're good at this particular style of shattering stuff. That's exactly what we want. Do that. So there wasn't, I didn't really need, I did a rough, but given my portfolio, he knew exactly what that's...
This prompts a question for me to you as an art director. Would you rather see, if someone is sending you, say those, like you said, like 12 or so images, right? Would you rather see 12 that are consistently within a style? Or if that artist can hit different notes, would you want to see a few different ways in which they work?
I want to see a specific style.
You want the style?
Yeah. That's what you're looking for. You know, it's nice to have a jack of all trades, but to tell you the truth, I'm generally a jack of all trades as a designer and art director. And I've got the budget, and I will hire someone to do something specifically, you know, and here's to say, go in at the beginning with your style. If you can do something else, once you've built that relationship, you can let the person know that you have some alternative styles. But you want to go in. You're not going to get in, you know, if you've got 5 different things that you can do.
So if you're working
because I only need one.
And you get in for your shattered style, but let's say you really like doing, you know, flowery watercolors or whatever. At a certain point, you can send them a link to those and say, "Is there?"
This is what I really
also
want
do
to
this,
do.
but get in. You know, try and focus your efforts. I think that's the better way to do it. I can throw something back to you because I would also like to state, as an art director, I've actually worked with both of you.
Dun, dun, dun.
You've done kayak work, Justin,
Yeah.
and Greg, you've done work for Canada's History.
Long ago,
magazine.
I've gotten better.
I've also gotten better.
Yeah.
I've also gotten
You both have, but you were both great when I hired you. You guys did exactly what we wanted, you know, so that's generally how it rolls with me. But I mean, how was it working with me as an art director?
It's interesting because I knew you as a person and as like a full and complete person that I like spending time with outside of work. And then I saw your work, so litigious and organized and like on point and, you know, managing every moment. It was nice because I felt a very strong division of those two sides of our lives, which was really great to work with. But also, I was working. So, dear listeners, I illustrated a series of hauntings for Canada's History magazine, and they were all set in very specific locations. And what I was provided with was a giant folder, digital folder of all of those places and tons of reference. So anytime that I went a little off target, I would get a very pleasant email from James saying, like, check folder for image 3 for a better understanding of what I'm asking for in this background.
But you didn't go that far off. You know, in that process, and this is something that's really important to explain to people, I'm being represented here like I'm somehow at the pinnacle of Canada's History Society and unquestionable in my decisions.
Right.
And that's actually not true. I have a editor-in-chief, I have a publisher, and I have a CEO. And all of them review the material that I'm working on. And although I have the, you know, I suppose I'm blessed enough to be able to work with the artists,
right.
It's not just what I say that goes. Other people have opinions, and those opinions matter. I can argue, and I can push forward or disregard if I absolutely feel so, but I do take every bit of information that I'm given in.
Yeah.
So, for instance, when we were working on your work, there was a couple, I believe it was was it the Alexander Keiths?
That's right. Oh man, we did that one.
Yeah, with the ghosts. So you did the almost visually for the listeners, if you could think of maybe the Ghost King from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Right. Sort of the half alive, half skeletal transparency kind of treatment.
Apparently, this is not how they wanted to render Alexander Keith.
No, but we did. It was, but it was too much. You know, he would come into my office and he'd be like, "This is
too scary.
It's too grotesque."
Yeah, too grotesque. The nose hole is too deep, I believe, is one of the notes I got.
And so it was those requests, but that was actually a very smooth process. If anything, if there was any stress in that, it was just simply the volume of content that we had to ask you produce in the timeline. It wasn't. That was. When I work with an artist for the first time, it's nice to have 1 or 2 images to work on because you get the relationship going. As much as we knew each other, our professional relationship did not exist at that point.
We knew each other in a different way after that.
Absolutely. And so it's a bit of a gamble to roll into somebody and say, hey, can you do 12 illustrations for me in a matter of weeks? And
they were fun. It was great.
Yeah.
I got really creeped out in the middle of the night. I was working late on one of those, and all of the reference photos of the Banff Hotel, they were fine. They were just like wonderful architectural drawings. And then I started looking I didn't have the right angle of the reference. It sounds silly, but of the pants of the bellhops. I just wanted to get them right. And I was like, emboldened by this idea that I'm working for a history magazine and I'm going to get these pants right, darn it. And they're not even going to notice that they didn't send that reference. I'm going to get it right.
You know what? From even our perspective, it doesn't matter if we notice. It's our readers.
Yeah,
it's the end. It's the end game. It's those people. Those people notice because they will.
So
look at
I
that
found
over.
an archive of old photos of the bellhops and the people working at this hotel, and it would just have this little note of how they died. Right? So it's like this old black and white photo and how they died, or, and just over and over I'm clicking through and everyone is smiling in that eerie way that they smile in old black and white photos. And it just lingered, and I had to close everything, turn it put all the art away, turn all the lights on. And I think I probably watched a silly episode of some anime just to but I got totally ghosted out in that. Working on that project, so that's your fault. I had the creeps.
Come play with us, Daddy.
I had a really good time working with you, and when I find your style, it's got a look that, for me, speaks heavily to the paranormal. Right. When I'm going to ghost, or at the same idea, I find your work because of a lot of what you do. And granted, I'm pushing for my editor to do a few more 1920s, 1930s pieces.
Yes,
exactly. And when that comes along, I know who I'm calling. Right. And it's the same idea. Justin, in case of our relationship and how we've worked, I hired you and you did a pirate treasure piece.
I remember. That was fun.
That was really good. Yeah. It was wonderful. And then we did another piece that was it was Royal Canadian Mounted Police for a fiction feature that you worked on. And if we had to talk about the reference thing, it was one of those where you'd been sent reference, but in the way that you creatively kind of take things over one time, it was, if we wanted to talk about, sort of an incorrect feature on some of the artwork, was that you'd put these cuffs.
I love my cuffs. Yeah.
Police. And so when we did pirates, you do these pirate, like 1700s long coats with these big cuffs, and it was perfect. But when we did the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, it was about the manifestation, like when they started and they were being trained at Lower Fort Garry. Mm-hmm. So you got Lower Fort Garry in the background. You've got all these, you got like the sergeant guy, and he's yelling at everybody. All these guys sitting on horses, kind of looking a little bit aloof and untested. But they've all got these puffy cuffs on them, and I had to write back, and I said, well, actually, if you need to look at the reference, because these coats at these points didn't actually have cuffs.
I totally forgot about this piece.
And then the collars, you'd given them folded over collars, but they had what would be considered Chinese collars, right? The short little half collars that were buttoned up, and having to make those those changes.
Yeah,
I'm constantly telling him to remove puffy sleeves from all
which is just really funny. But I mean, but you were good enough to make those changes, which is great, and it's one of those things. But I mean, I would work with either of you guys again. Actually, I have to make a point to pencil you guys in for something.
Now that you remind me of that story, it also I was working at Complex Games at that time, and we were just leading up to the Game Developers Conference in San Fran. And so I was doing freelance. I was doing kind of my own. Yeah, I was like freelancing for you, doing my own stuff. And then we had all these like kind of harsh, like pretty tight deadlines for the game company. And that was like a big nail in the coffin of like, maybe I should quit my job and focus on my own thing and freelance, because I felt like I couldn't give your project the time it deserved. And then I had no time for my own. And everything at Complex Games, my style was useless, right? Like I couldn't.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So,
your voice wasn't being
heard. You couldn't, right? Like you're on a team. Everybody has to have the same voice. Yeah. Whereas, like with freelance and my own stuff, I could use that voice.
But from a freelance and an entrepreneurial point of view, I mean, I think that a lot of people would say the rule of thumb is to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
When you're doing that, but I guess that brings up the point to say yes to everything until you don't have to say yes to everything anymore and be self-aware enough.
So let me ask you a question. So let's say you're in that moment where you have a bit of a side hustle and you're doing a lot of freelance stuff, aside from your job, and it's just because it's what you love, and you've gotten yourself into trouble with the deadlines that your art director has given you. Let's say a position Justin is in. Is it better for that person to immediately tell you like, ooh, there could be a problem with this deadline? Does that raise a red flag for you? Or is it better as the project progresses a little bit closer to that deadline to let you know?
Oh, as soon as possible. I mean, you have to, as a professional, and the more that you work, the more you'll be able to assess a situation.
Right.
You know, to be able to really, when the red flags come up, to know whether it's truly a concern or whether it's just your own insecurity in the moment or whatnot. But if you assess it and you realize it's going to be a problem, communication is everything.
Right.
Especially when someone's paying you money to do something.
Right.
You need to call the person up and explain the situation to them, because what people need to understand is I have deadlines. I try to pad my deadlines. I learned a long time ago that to go to actual deadline is always a possibility, but it is not advisable. So, you know, you'd like to finish off a week, or in some cases a week and a half before my deadline for the magazine.
Because something always goes wrong. Somewhere along the way.
And if something does go wrong, it allows them, if they contact me, to say, hey, I need 3 or 4 more days because this went wrong. I can go, no problem.
Right.
But if
a benevolent dictator.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that flexibility. But if I'm on deadline and things have gone wrong, and then something goes wrong for the artist and they leave it till the day of to let me know, I mean, what can you do? You know, it's just about it's relationships, respect, and communication. That's almost 50% outside of talent and being able to hit a deadline. Those other things go so long. They're so far into staying on as a person that an art director thinks about working with.
Can you tell us what rates would be? Are you allowed to talk dollars and cents?
I don't have my rate book with me here, but yes, I can.
But in broad sense?
In the broad sense, I use, I go off I'm not going to get the name right because it's so long, but it's the American Artists Guild Guidebook to Pricing and Ethics.
I've gone through that before. I remember looking at that.
Yeah, that's available online. You can go onto Amazon. So the American Artists Guild Guide to Pricing and Ethics. If you go onto Amazon, it's available. It's about $45. It's a massive book, and it covers off pricing for editorial illustration, cartooning, animation, medical illustration, design. It has contracts.
Okay, though.
I didn't know that existed.
Do you? We were talking about this a while ago, and I've been thinking about this. Yeah. When you start out, though, is that a great thing to be rating your work right off the bat? Like fresh out of college.
Okay, so hold on. Yeah, this is good. I like where you're going here, but hold on. Let's get him answer the question. So, what's the range? A spot illustration, Canada's History Magazine, which has a readership of about how many?
Canada's History Magazine is 40,000.
40,000 people read Canada's History Magazine. So, a spot illustration in that, say full color or a couple of colors,
$100 to $150.
$100 to $150. A cover.
Cover ranges from $1,200 to and up, depends on the complexity, but starting range would be about $1,200.
Right. So this is not nothing money if you're got a good relationship with your art director.
One of those 20 to 30 artists that's frequent.
Consistently.
Yeah. And how often do you guys release? Like how?
We're bi-monthly. So every 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But not every magazine cover is an illustrated cover. Right. We do the illustrated cover. That is what we'll budget for.
Right.
And generally what I do is I start at that base. So if it's a starting artist, I will start at the base price and we'll go through. And if they do a great job, it's up to negotiation. And there's a negotiation to say, hey, I think that my work is worth this. I've pulled through for you. The deadline is hit. It was a lot of work last time. There was a lot of revisions involved. So let's make it this price. And then it's up for me to go and I can talk with the people who I work with and we can decide budgetarily whether that's feasible.
Okay. Show me.
So I cut Justin off on a tangent that he was going on that we've had a conversation of before. When should an artist charge what for their work?
Well, the thing I was going to bring up, and I think we've all talked about this, is right out of school, people who have been painting in Photoshop for a year and have some design skill, have some illustration skill. They're out in the scary world. They want to start freelancing. They're starting to get people like, oh, I have a kid's book I'd like to do. Oh, I have a logo. Like, can you do this for me? And so they go to the internet and they see, okay, I should be charging $80 an hour for my illustration time. And so somebody without much of a skill set charging $80 an hour rarely goes like that.
They're not getting work. And then they're upset.
Yeah, and then they're upset. And kind of, I guess, like...
And then there's this culture also online right now, I mean, everywhere online, where you're never supposed to work for free, right? As if somehow that every time you got it wrong, you should have been paid for that too, which, I have issue with.
Well, I will say this. An hourly rate is a very difficult thing to work with when you have no experience. The book that I just talked about, so all the numbers that I just gave you guys, I mean, that's all available within that book. Keeping in mind that those are American prices. It's from the American Artist Guild. So you have to go in, you have to do Canadian dollar conversions, but it's a starting point.
Yeah.
You know what? You can look at $80 an hour and but there has to be a proviso. I'm sure they didn't put a little asterisk and say, like, after 4 years experience, you can charge this price.
But they should.
You need a starting point. I mean, otherwise you're just in a vacuum and you have no idea what to charge. I would say as a starting point, you go, you look, and the way that this book works is it charts things out. It will say, like, major magazine, medium-sized magazine, where Canada's history, though 40,000 sounds like a huge number, it's actually quite a small number. We fall under a small print circulation as a niche publisher.
Right.
So I can look at that, and this thing charts out. It says, like, this amount of magazines for this kind of publisher, these are the base prices that you would cover for a cover: a full page illustration on the interior, a half page, quarter page, 1/8 page, and so on and so forth. You look at those and you say, okay, that's the base for a professional.
Where
I
am
will
I in that
exactly.
range?
I can drop this by 15%. What you have to be very careful, though, is that you are moving into the professional realm, and although illustrators and designers in Manitoba don't fall under any kind of guild. They aren't categorized as a legitimate trade. They are in other provinces, Ontario, for instance.
Right.
And so what you have to make sure is that in dropping your price to account for your inexperience, that you're not undercutting people so drastically that you're making enemies within the industry. And so there's a level of maturity, trial and error. I would always suggest to people, if you're coming out of college and you're really that concerned, find a mentor.
Isn't there, though? Yeah, find a mentor.
Find people who are doing it already and go and ask them, because you don't want to be going in for something that's maybe like, say the job is the cover for Kayak or even a full page illustration, and you're going to get like $550 for that. This is, again, that's just a
don't
basic
quote
term.
James on this.
Yeah.
But don't charge $300 for it.
Right.
And then undercut all the other artists, because number one, it's going to be bad for the artists who are already doing professional work and whatnot. And at the same time, if you charge $300 and you screw up, nobody's happy in the end.
Okay, I'm going to say the unpopular thing, though. The artist is not responsible for everybody else and everyone else's fair rate wage. Depending on where they live and what it costs them to live there, maybe charging less than people is their superpower.
It's their responsibility to understand what the industry standard is and not to undercut it dramatically.
Right.
And that's what these books give you. These books, hundreds of artists are being interviewed and giving their price range. So you can see what a low price range and what a high price range is, right? So if you undercut that dramatically, you're not helping the industry, right? Mm-hmm. And more importantly, it's their responsibility and all artists' responsibility to influence the experience they're going to have as an artist. So if you're charging too little and you end up doing lots of work and that job goes wrong, you're not going to be an artist for very long.
Ooh, well said. Turn the tables on me like a good art director should.
Yeah.
Well, I think that long, uncomfortable silence at the end gives us some time to think about what we have learned today from James Gillespie, the art director of Canada's History magazine and Kayak, formerly known as The Beaver. This has been Super Pulp Science, where we're encouraging you to join the fight and make comics.
I agree with that, and I would like to end on a happier note because that felt so final. Let's not end there. We can't end on that note. No. I sound like such a hard ass, and I'm not. I'm a lovely, cuddly teddy bear, everyone.
You're a monster. You're a monster. You're the art director of our teddy fearful dreams. That's who you are.
A teddy bear with an iron fist.